Hi everyone. Welcome back to our latest episode of the Growth Playbook with myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Bolio. Today is going to be focused on labor. So I'm not sure. I assume, Dad, you're probably focusing on labor here in the United States, not globally, but I am very excited to go through the wages and quit rates and all the information that you have to share with us. It's been a topic that I hear frequently just in my own circles. I hear it talked about as the labor crisis or labor issues, or AI is going to take over all of our jobs, or I can't find work even though I'm highly skilled. Everybody says there's so many places to go work right now, but I have filled out hundreds of resumes and no one's called me back. So really curious what the data says in comparison to the qualitative inputs that I hear from friends and family.
Wow. I'm impressed you got all that and you have friends. That's really cool.
Me too. It took a lot of hard work over the years.
I think you hit upon it though, Kim, is that labor, when it comes out in the news, it's like this homogeneous thing. And it's like, this will tell us how the economy is doing. Well, the fault with that, there's a number of faults. One is that it's a lagging indicator. So it tells us with great certainty how the economy has been.
Yeah,
That's all that it does.
it's helpful.
Get helpful. The solid view in the rearview mirror. We'll hit that tree, but we're gonna.
Exactly.
And it's of no help to people that you were talking about. So we're going to try to take care of that. It's a general economic indicator that's lagging. There are other things like the business confidence index and others that you and I like that can help us see the future better, which we can get into at another time. But now that I brought it up, it's in decline. Just to let you know, third month in a row it's declined and it's below the January 2025 level. So we're below
Mm,
your levels. So that doesn't speak well for most industries to see a lot of as we head into this. But be that as may, I kind of ranged off there. I'm sorry. The
all
December
right, you're
data.
allowed.
Oh, thanks. The December data was generally perceived as good, encouraging data. But when you take it apart, it's like that really is a depends. And
Mm,
and what I mean by that is the increases in December came from, I don't want to get it wrong, leisure, hospitality, private education, and healthcare. So unless your clients are in one of those buckets, it's like uh, or the people looking for a job, unless they're trying to go into one of those buckets and find a job, it's like that's not easy because those are the places that are hiring, and the ones that are not, professional business services, they went down 97,000 jobs. Manufacturing year over year, we're talking about manufacturing is down 68,000 jobs for the year, and distribution is down 17,500 jobs for the year. Uh, for 2025 is the year I'm talking about. So again, if you're got that resume and you're trying to become a professional consultant of some kind, it's harder to find a job. And if you are a HVAC tech, you got a job tomorrow.
mm.
It really does depend. Unfortunately, the broad brush is of no help to people of different stripes. Um, so, with that in mind, we also want to add in geography. If you're fixed in your mind, I am not going to leave wherever you happen to live. I'm not going to leave Vermont. Well, you don't get as many job offers in Vermont. There's better social welfare, but you don't get as many job offers in Vermont. That may get some feedback, but I
It's all right. The comments will be fun.
I make fun of Vermont once a day just to feel personally fulfilled.
The upside down New Hampshire.
That's right. Exactly right. That's exactly right. See, in many ways. So you have to be willing to move. And one or two generations ago, that was expected. The factory closed, and you wanted another job. You put the kids and the family in the station wagon, and off you'd go to the next job. But now it's like, no, the job should be here where I live because I don't want to move. And that culture thing makes it more difficult for people too. Um, to get that job. Where we did at ITR, and many people still do, that distributed workforce helped a lot, but now there's this move for it to narrow in again, and that makes it tougher. So let's see if we can help people with this. I'm not going to concentrate so much on those looking for labor, looking for a job, although get to the end and you want to, we can see if we can come up with something to help. But let's talk from the business point of view. And you need labor or you don't need labor. We're going to cover it all. To your point, the labor participation rate is good. So it's not like there's a ton of people who are refusing to work. I used to get so irritated hearing that there's people who only want to work. Those millennials don't want to work. Millennials are the strongest working segment in the population, and their labor participation rate, older millennials, is better than anybody else's. So let's stop beating on millennials and there's people just don't want to work anymore. That's a cheap out. And it's patently not true. So let's drop that. You can't blame it on that. What is of importance, though, to our listeners is that the quit rate, which you mentioned, is rising.
Mm.
So back when you were a manager of your whole team and the quit rate was rising, what would that put in your mind that you have to do?
Be a better leader.
Exactly.
See, I
Yeah.
would imagine a quit rate is potential. Well, in my mind, people often quit leaders in management. You can throw money at them, you can throw other types of benefits at them and have daycares on site. But if your leadership team or your management team is not good, then those other items still don't necessarily entice as much as needed.
No, you're absolutely right. The quit rate, by the way, is the highest since July of last year, so that's saying something. So let's take it back to where we were. If you're in private education, if you're in healthcare or leisure, for instance, hospitality, hotels, all the rest of that, and you know the quit rate's rising, it means that you better be that good leader and better treat your employees well because there's another job just waiting for them. The hiring is going on, and you better not just be a jerk about it. You better treat them with respect and be nice and all the rest of that. And that's leadership. And it's also good pay. A lot of people, this used to drive me nuts too. People, what's the minimum amount I have to increase my wages this year? I said, well, it depends how fast you want to lose them. One question.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the money part of the equation. Uh, Wages in 2025 went up year over year 3.8%. Okay, that's for all workers, 3.8% hourly workers. And that would include, I'm not sure what it includes besides hourly. So we'll leave it at that. That's a pretty big number. Real income, which means adjusted for inflation, went up 1.1%. So people who are middle class, let's say, and maybe making $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, their pay went up 1.1% adjusted for inflation. You have to ask yourself, did they even feel that?
I wouldn't think so.
No, all they're concentrating on, boy, food's gone up,
Yeah.
and rents are softening a little, not softening, but slowing down in their rate of rise and all the rest of that. But they still, people highlight that. Have you noticed a lot of things drive me nuts? They go, well, rate increases are not going up as fast. Well, they're still up a lot from where they were a year ago, and people have to pay that every month. They're reminded every month, I got to pay this stupid rent for this stupid.
It's true. And just to play with that for the side story that popped in my head as you said that, so I watch a lot of HGTV. And right now I'm watching Mediterranean Life, and Chloe was watching it with me sometime this week. And the woman's rent that she had was $600 to $800 a month. And she ended up with this gorgeous apartment. And Chloe was just absolutely floored. She's like, how can $600 to $800 a month get you that kind of an apartment? And I was like, don't get any ideas. She's gonna end up moving away when she turns 18.
Well, that's true. And as an aside, maybe a tangent, there I just saw an article about how seniors are retiring out of the United States, and one of the reasons is you can get really nice housing in Italy for a whole lot less.
Italy. That's where it was Italy.
Yeah,
Yep. And it's
and
beautiful.
yes, so it is a problem. So getting back to the point, you can say that inflation, real wages went up, but that doesn't mean that's a statistic. That doesn't mean they're feeling it. So as an employer, you have to be aware of the fact that they're facing all these pressures, and if you're parsimonious in your wage increases, you're going to get dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction leads to less efficiency, less output. Congratulations, you're saving a nickel at the expense of a dime.
Yeah.
You know, and so the first takeaway is you have to be willing to pay well, not just pay good enough. And that you can go online to find that out, what are median wages in different industries. The MIT has a um, survey, just do MIT wage survey, and you'll find out what a living wage is in your area because it'll vary. And one of the things that we did at ITR was always make sure we hired above the living wage. Um, and that's what everybody should do. So lesson number one is make sure you're paying enough. Here's my tip to you. Money supply is expanding. Inflationary pressures are keeping inflation still, 2.8%. That doesn't sound like much, but it's going to be going up later in 2026 because of the money supply, because of other inflationary pressures. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, inflation's at 2.7, I only have to give a 2.7% increase, 2.8% increase, you're wrong because you're not benefiting your employee. And my advice to you would be each of the next 4 years to make sure you're thinking in terms of a 4% annual increase and stress test your business. Can I handle the amount of employees I have at 4% increase each year? What does that do to my gross profit, my bottom line? What do I have to do to make this thing work? And if it all works out fine because you don't have that many employees or whatever the reason is, great. But if it matters to your pro formas, you got to come up with a plan B because you're not going to be able to go to 3% and think that's fine. It's not going to work. So, all right, I'm going to put you're the boss again, and you got this operation going, and employees are important, but you're a pretty far-flung organization. Let's assume you're a $20 million organization and you're participating in different verticals, and you've been in business for 20 years, and and all the rest of that, and you're facing this wage inflation. What's one of the things that would come to your mind as a business leader that I should be thinking, all right, if that's this problem, what do I need to be thinking about?
I don't know if I'm gonna hit the nail on the head on this one, but thoughts that popped into my head as soon as you mentioned different verticals, that was kind of my clue. And that I could focus on verticals that might have better opportunities for maintaining labor if we're sticking with focused on just the labor itself. Might have less um other nuances. So if like virtual is more acceptable in three of my verticals that I'm targeting, then or three of the verticals that I'm operating within, I might start focusing there because I could attract more talent from other regions. While still having maybe a greater labor pool, again, based upon the industry and the quit rate and everything else that's going on.
The verticals and in dispersed and can I hire because people are laying off, all that's right on target. And the other thing that you didn't mention on the verticals is if I'm selling into this market, this market, this market, this market, which one offers me the best opportunity to raise prices so that I
Mm.
can cover the labor increase? And that's where your marketing hat comes in and says, there's plenty of room in the market for you to go up 3%, 5%. And and 20 million is not necessarily a smaller business, but you taught me this years ago. Smaller businesses have a hard time raising prices because they hate to hear no.
Mm.
And so they're very slow with raising prices, or they just, you used to call me the bobblehead. Yeah, I'll do that, whatever. I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it. So, um, but you got to have that rigor, right? By silo, by market, whatever it happens to be. And you also have to be hard enough in terms of feelings, not hard as in not feeling, but understand if I can't hire enough, I need to automate. And when you do that, your crew's going to get really scared and they're going to say, oh, they're trying to automate us out of existence. AI, you mentioned it earlier, but it could be a piece of machinery. They don't care about us employees, which means you got to communicate the daylights out of it. We can't find a lot of folks. This is going to free up resources, which means I can give you these raises and we can do different things. And so you got to make sure you communicate. I'm not automating your job. I'm trying to make us a better company so that you can enjoy some of the fruit of that. But you have to automate. It's amazing to me, Kim, how many companies in this country do not want to do that.
Mm.
And it's just, and a lot of them are led by older leadership who are not fond of change. Um, I'm not real fond of change. I got my iPhone got updated the other night and I'm still mad. I'm, it's, but it's true. You gotta look at your silo, see where you can raise prices. You gotta automate. You gotta decide where you can gain other efficiencies. And this is one that most people don't think of too often. You have to say to yourself, what can I stop doing that I'm doing?
That's exactly where my head just went. You
I
just
knew
like
it.
you said the words that were literally just jumping in front of my brain.
Yeah. Well, it's true, right? You need to, what am I wasting money and time on? And you and I have both experienced business leaders that don't want to give that up
Mm.
because, and there's always a reason, right? We've been doing that for the last 50 years. Big deal. You say that and they look at you like you just, cursed their mother. It's just,
And it doesn't even have to be specific products or solutions. It could even be customers, going through your customers and looking at margins. Um,
that's an excellent point. Fire some customers that are taking money from you.
yeah,
Uh, Stop doing a service or a product or stop serving some customers. And your revenue may go down, but your profits are going to go up.
that's just it. Looking at bottom line versus just always looking at top line.
Right. So this labor issue, not being able to hire enough or not being able to afford it, means that you have to be agile and you have to be creative and you have to really think about what's going on in your business. You can't just treat it as a problem. You got to be active with a very active solution to it. And it sounds simple when we say it, but a lot of people are so stuck on the day-to-day treadmill that it's like you don't really get down to it. You just bitch about it. And
Yeah, and or it could even be not even the treadmill. It could be that it seems like it's such a Herculean effort
yeah,
to get there. You don't even know where to start. How do I know how do you start eating an elephant? They say one bite at a time, but writing down what those bite-sized chunks are and documenting them and having a clear, actionable bite-sized plan that gets you to that bigger goal. I think it's part of what you were just saying, where people don't take the time to go through that brain exercise and actually write it down.
oh, you're right. And it's a senior management team or the leader. It's a bit of a traction exercise in that what are the first steps, the second steps, and the things that'll get me to my goal. Now, one other thing I'd like to bring up is and we talked about it, and you mentioned it in your earlier remarks. Some people, you know, just I'll bring up they're slowing down because they're in that manufacturing, they're in the distribution, they're in whatever. So business isn't real exciting. And you had mentioned some people that can't find enough help, and some people who, the resumes and all the rest of that. Now we have to use that kind of uncertainty, that kind of I don't really know, and put it on the leader and say, all right, if I could show you four lead indicators that say you're going to be busier in 6 months, what should you do? Most of them are going to say, I'm going to wait the 6 months before I hire anybody. And what do we know? Wrong.
It takes a while to train.
Hire and train. That's exactly right. I was talking to a fellow, and I don't want to mention his industry, but he said, years ago I put out an ad for 5 jobs, and I'd have literally, he said, 200 people applying for the job. He says, now I put out an ad for 5 jobs, and I might get 7. And of those, only 2 are qualified. He says, I just can't get them. If you're in that industry where it's going to take time to find the people, you got to start hiring now. If I can show you with lead indicators, you're going to need them in 6 months. You don't have the time to wait, and you're going to
Yeah.
need training and training and training. Uh, I learned this trick. It's not really a trick. It's a strategy. Call it by the right word from somebody in Vistage. I give credit if I can remember where, but it was outside Chicago. And he was in a not sexy industry at all. Distribution, and even as distribution goes, it was not like it's a wow, that's really interesting. You're moving robots. They weren't moving robots. And it was hard for them to fire people because jobs could be had, and it was an industry as nobody went to high school said, I want to work in that industry and that sort of stuff. So what he did was that he opened up his facility to different organizations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, churches, AA, whatever, to use the facility. And he said, what that did was, he says, I know I wasn't going to hire a Boy Scout. I know I wasn't going to hire, somebody, but the word got out that that's a clean facility in there, and the word began to spread. And, Frank's a nice guy. He lets us do this. And when you talk to Frank, you can see that this is really a good place to work. And next thing you know, you change the view that people have by being part of the community. The message there obviously being make sure your business is part of the community. If you're working on an island and you don't really care, they won't care back.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I feel like people look for that even more in today's generation when they're looking for jobs is your corporate responsibility, your community engagement, what are your core values? All of that need to be much more transparent, I feel, with the millennial generation than they did in years past.
And you better live those values and live those statements, or else you get a great big hypocrite on you, and somebody quits because of the leader, right back to where we were.
Yeah.
Um, my last tip is, and this is, of my involvement, but I think it's a good tip. Go to your community colleges and say, what programs do you have? And see if there's one you can get involved in, either somewhat sponsoring so that you get so many people coming to work for you. You're just known, and there are companies that do that here in New Hampshire. There are associations of companies that do that, and they all get help out of the community college system, and they have a steady pipeline of employees because they're partnering with the community college. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's just saying, I'll hire them. And so they just tell the students, I get you a job as soon as you're done. You want to move up the economic ladder, we can help you. And you become part of the solution instead of saying people don't want to work and people this. You become a answer to people's problem, and that you give them a pathway. Go to your community college and say, how can I help? And they will have answers. And if they don't, move to another state.
It's a telltale sign you're in the wrong
That's
school.
right.
One idea that came to mind through this discussion, and I think it helps both sides of the equation, are referrals. And since we know there are so many people looking to leave current employment or are open to leaving their current employment situation, and we talked about having a good leadership team in place. You know that your existing team is doing a good job and they're happy. Ask them for friends or family that they feel would be good fits for their team. They're not going to recommend somebody unless they're confident in that person because they're a good employee. So
Right.
you have to have that good open relationship with your employees so that way you know that you can trust their recommendation. And in return, those seeking jobs network, get out there, meet new people, continue to expand your network on LinkedIn, join different communities on LinkedIn, whatever the case may be. So that way people start learning who you are and that you're a good person, what your core values are, what your skill sets are. And then you'll be top of mind when they hear their boss mention hey, Kim, we're hiring for this type of role. Do you know anybody? Well, actually, I've been speaking with so and so for the last 8 months, and I think they might be a great fit and open to discussions. So just a lot of networking and referrals might help both sides better.
Exactly right. So there's a lot that businesses can do to deal with this problem. You can't get away without paying more, but you can do a lot about helping your company in the different ways that we've been talking about. So you can get the people you need and you can still be profitable and you can be a real value to your community. Uh, Labor. Next time you hear them talk about the labor number for the month, go, big deal. Tell me about my industry. And you can get state data too, by the way. You can get state data online and find out what's happening in your state or your region if you're a multi-state entity.
Where would they go for that?
Google, AI,
To the Google,
to the Google.
the cloud somewhere.
I wouldn't necessarily use AI. Yeah, I mean, like here in New Hampshire, New Hampshire unemployment security, they have all kinds of information and they can tell me how many uh, all kinds of statistics that you'd be amazed at. So it just depends on the state. But go to your state unemployment or state job security, state employment, whatever it is, and start digging. Ask.
It's a solvable problem, is what I hear.
Yes, it is. And it's one that if you pay some attention to, it pays really good dividends.
Agreed. All right. Well, I appreciate you bringing this subject for us to discuss in today's episode. Any other closing thoughts before we end for today?
No.
Perfect. I guess the only other one, she's a friend of both of ours that came to mind. We kept mentioning strong leadership teams as a requirement for a lot of this being success. I'm trying to think through any of it. I think it was required for all of the different strategies that we talked about. It has to be a leader that's willing to seek the data and be proactive and plan and scenario plan and test out and build out performance, like you said, and everything else, not just leading the team. Which all brought to mind what happens if they don't have a strong leadership team. Obviously, they need to work on that. And that's where Kathleen had jumped to mind when we kept talking about that. So, Kathleen Quinn Vota, she can look her up online. She has a lot of different solutions that help build up those strong cultures and leaderships that's going to be needed to support all the strategies that we just talked about today to combat this thought process of the labor issue is something I can't control. It is. You just have to have the right team in place to manage it.
Exactly so. I think that's a great idea, and Kathleen is certainly very, very good at her job.
Yep, it's been at it a while.
All right.
Awesome. Well, it was nice to see you today, and I'll see you next week for we're talking about Japan and the troubles in Japan's economy and how that may impact the United States. Correct?
Yeah, what it means to us. My concern was we say Japan, people go, who cares?
Mm, it's an
Um,
island.
yeah, that's right. Uh, it matters. And I think next week it's not going to be what a lot of people think. There's a lesson there, there's some realities there, and there's some direct implications. So I think we'll be able to put that all together and wrap into not only the coming year, but into the depression that's coming.
All right. Should be a great topic. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week.